In the heart of Manhattan, where glass towers pierce the sky and yellow cabs weave through streets like threads in an endless tapestry, there exists a world of extremes, a world where a single meal can cost more than most people earn in a month, where appearances dictate worth, and where humanity often takes a back seat to status. This is a story about judgment, redemption, and the unexpected ways life teaches us the most profound lessons. It's about a night that began with cruelty and ended with a truth no one saw coming. Before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love hearing from our viewers around the world, and if you enjoy stories that make you think and feel, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next incredible story. Hit that notification bell too. Now let's begin. The evening air in New York City carried that peculiar mix of early autumn crispness and urban warmth. October had painted the trees in Central Park with russet and gold. But here, on the Upper East Side, nature's palette competed with neon signs and the gleaming facades of restaurants where reservations were made months in advance. Le Château Moderne wasn't just a restaurant. It was a statement. Its floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the city skyline. Its interior was designed by an award-winning French architect, and its menu was curated by a Michelin-starred chef whose name alone could make food critics weep. The dress code was strict, the prices were astronomical, and the clientele was exactly what you'd expect. Old money, new money, and people desperately trying to look like they had either. It was 7:30 on a Friday evening when Khalid Al-Rashid pushed through the heavy brass doors of Le Château Moderne. The October wind had disheveled his dark hair, and his clothing told a story that most people would misread entirely. He wore a simple white cotton thobe, the traditional ankle-length garment of the Arabian Gulf, slightly wrinkled from travel. Over it, a thin beige cardigan that had seen better days. On his feet, worn leather sandals that had walked through airports across 3 continents in the past 48 hours. Around his neck, a red and white checkered gutra was draped loosely, and his face bore the shadow of 2 days' worth of stubble. His eyes, dark and intelligent, carried the exhaustion of someone who had just endured a 13-hour flight, 2 layovers, and the particular kind of chaos that comes with international business travel. Khalid looked tired, he looked disheveled, and to the untrained eye, he looked poor. The moment he stepped inside, the temperature in the room seemed to shift. Conversations didn't stop, but they paused just long enough for eyes to dart toward the entrance, for eyebrows to rise, for judgments to form in the space of a heartbeat. The hostess, a young woman named Charlotte with platinum blonde hair pulled into a severe bun, looked up from her podium. Her smile, practiced and perfect, faltered for just a fraction of a second. "Good evening," Khalid said in English, his accent cultured and clear, carrying just a hint of his Emirati origins. "I have a reservation. Al-Rashid. Party of 1. Charlotte's fingers moved across her tablet, her manicured nails clicking against the screen. Her expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes told a different story. They swept over his clothing, lingering on the sandals, the wrinkled thobe, the casual cardigan. "Al-Rashid," she repeated, her voice cool. "I'm not seeing it here. It should be under Khalid Al-Rashid," he said patiently. "Made 3 weeks ago, for 7:30. She tapped the screen again, more forcefully this time. "Sir, I'm not finding any reservation under that name. Perhaps you have the wrong restaurant." There it was, that tone. Polite enough to maintain plausible deniability, but edged with something else. Something that said, "You don't belong here." Khalid pulled out his phone, scrolling through his emails with fingers that moved with practiced ease despite his exhaustion. "I received a confirmation. Let me find it." "Sir," Charlotte interrupted, her voice taking on a firmer quality. "Even if there was a reservation, I'm afraid we have a dress code. Le Château Moderne requires business formal attire for all dinner guests." Her eyes pointedly examined his clothing once more. "I understand," Khalid said, looking up from his phone. "I've just come from the airport. International travel. I assure you, Trevor," Charlotte called out, gesturing to a waiter who had been passing nearby with a tray of empty glasses. Trevor Morrison was 32 years old, with the kind of sharp features and confident bearing that came from years of working in high-end establishments. He had perfect posture, perfectly styled sandy brown hair, and a perfectly rehearsed smile that he deployed like a weapon. He also had something else, a belief that he could read people at a glance, and that his reads were never wrong. He set down his tray and approached the hostess stand, his eyes already assessing Khalid, with the cold calculation of someone who had decided the outcome before hearing the question. "What seems to be the problem?" Trevor asked, directing his question to Charlotte as if Khalid wasn't standing right there. "This gentleman claims to have a reservation, but I'm not finding it in our system. And as you can see, There's also the matter of appropriate attire. Trevor turned to face Khalid fully, and his expression was one of barely concealed disdain. He crossed his arms, taking a position that was somehow both professional and aggressive. "Let me be clear," Trevor said, his voice carrying that particular kind of condescension that people use when they want to seem helpful while actually being cruel. "Le Château Moderne is one of the finest dining establishments in Manhattan. We serve clients who expect a certain atmosphere, a certain standard." "I understand that," Khalid replied, his voice still patient. "I'm happy to pay for any inconvenience, but I have the confirmation right here." "Sir," Trevor interrupted, taking a step closer, "I'm going to be frank with you. Even if you somehow had a legitimate reservation, which I doubt, we can't seat you dressed like that. This isn't a food court. This isn't a casual dining establishment. We have standards." Several nearby diners had now turned their attention fully to the scene. A couple at a window table whispered to each other. A businessman with silver hair and a navy suit watched with unconcealed interest. Khalid took a slow breath. He'd experienced this before, in different cities, different contexts, the assumptions, the judgments based on appearance. Usually, he let it slide. He had nothing to prove. No ego to feed. But tonight, after the exhausting journey, after 2 days of navigating time zones and airport security and cramped airplane seats, something in him decided to see where this would go. "I see," Khalid said quietly. "And what would you suggest I do?" Trevor's smile was razor-sharp. "I'd suggest you try somewhere more appropriate to your circumstances. There's a diner about 3 blocks down. They don't have a dress code, and I'm sure it's more in your price range." The words hung in the air like poison. Several diners openly stared now. Charlotte looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Trevor stood with his arms still crossed, satisfied with his assessment and his handling of the situation. "More in my price range," Khalid repeated softly, something flickering in his dark eyes. Not anger, something else, something that might have been amusement if the situation weren't so sad. "Look," Trevor said, his voice dropping to a tone that was meant to sound reasonable, "I'm actually trying to help you here. A place like this, one meal could run you $500, easy. Probably more than you make in a week, right? I'm saving you from an embarrassing situation. You should be thanking me." A woman at a nearby table gasped audibly. Her companion, an older man in an expensive suit, shook his head in disapproval, though whether he disapproved of Trevor's words or Khalid's presence wasn't clear. Khalid studied Trevor for a long moment. He looked tired, and there was something deeply weary in his expression, as if he'd seen this scene play out too many times in too many places. "You think you know me," Khalid said, and it wasn't a question. "I know enough," Trevor replied. "I've worked here for 6 years. I can spot someone who doesn't belong from across the room. And you, my friend, definitely don't belong." "Trevor," Charlotte said nervously. "Maybe we should just—" "I've got this, Charlotte," Trevor said without looking at her. He focused entirely on Khalid, his expression a mix of arrogance and something that might have been cruel satisfaction. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're disturbing our guests." "I haven't done anything," Khalid pointed out calmly. "Your presence is disturbance enough. Now, you can leave on your own, or I can call security. Your choice." The restaurant had gone nearly silent. Even the soft jazz music playing through the speakers seemed to fade into the background. All eyes were on the scene unfolding at the entrance. Khalid reached into the pocket of his cardigan and pulled out a leather wallet, worn and simple. He opened it slowly, deliberately, and extracted a black credit card. Not just any black card, an invitation-only card that had no spending limit, that was given to fewer than 10,000 people worldwide, that required a level of wealth most people couldn't even conceptualize. "This card," Khalid said quietly, holding it up so Trevor could see it clearly, "has no limit. Would that cover your concerns about my price range?" Trevor's eyes widened slightly, but he recovered quickly. "Anyone can get a card these days. Probably fake, or maybe it's someone else's. I've seen it all." "Call your manager," Khalid said, and there was something different in his voice now. Not anger, authority. The kind that comes not from arrogance, but from someone who has spent their entire life making decisions that affected thousands of people. "Excuse me? Call your manager, right now." Trevor laughed, but it sounded forced. "Oh, now you want to speak to the manager? Classic." "Trevor," Charlotte said again, more urgently this time, "maybe you should get Mr. Beaumont." "I don't need to get anyone," Trevor snapped. "I can handle one confused tourist just fine." But Khalid was already looking past Trevor, catching the eye of a distinguished older man in a black suit who had emerged from a hallway near the kitchen. The man's eyes had been surveying the dining room, as managers do, and they had landed on the commotion at the entrance. Gerard Beaumont had managed Le Château Moderne for 15 years. He was 63 years old, French-born, with silver hair and the bearing of someone who had spent his life in the service industry at its highest levels. He read situations the way expert chess players read boards, and what he saw at his entrance made his stomach drop. He recognized Khalid Al-Rashid immediately. Mon Dieu, Gerard breathed, and he was moving before Trevor even realized what was happening. Gerard crossed the restaurant floor in long, purposeful strides, his expression shifting from professional calm to something closer to panic. He reached the entrance just as Trevor was saying, "Sir, for the last time." "Trevor," Gerard said sharply, "step aside, now." Trevor blinked, confused. "Mr. Beaumont, I was just handling. You were just making the biggest mistake of your career," Gerard said, and there was steel in his voice. He turned to Khalid, and his entire demeanor transformed. "Mr. Al-Rashid, I cannot apologize enough. Please forgive this inexcusable treatment." The restaurant, already quiet, went completely silent. Trevor's face had gone pale. "Wait, what?" Gerard ignored him entirely, his focus on Khalid. "Your reservation is of course in our system. It was made by your executive assistant 3 weeks ago, the finest table in the house. I personally confirmed it this morning. I don't know how this confusion happened, but I know exactly how it happened," Khalid said quietly, his eyes still on Trevor. Trevor looked like he might be sick. The black credit card in Khalid's hand suddenly seemed to glow like an accusation. Around the restaurant, diners were pulling out their phones, some Googling, some whispering to their companions with increasing urgency. "Oh my God," someone whispered from a nearby table. "That's Khalid Al-Rashid. The Khalid Al-Rashid." The name spread through the restaurant like wildfire. Phones appeared on nearly every table. Photos, news articles, Wikipedia pages loading on screens. Khalid Al-Rashid, age 41, Emirati businessman and philanthropist, CEO of Al-Rashid Global Holdings, a conglomerate with interests in real estate, technology, renewable energy, and humanitarian aid. Net worth estimated at $8.7 billion. Known for flying commercial, for wearing traditional dress regardless of setting, for donating more than $500 million to various causes in the past 5 years. Featured in Forbes, Time, The Economist. Advisor to 3 different governments on sustainable development. And currently standing in the entrance of Le Château Moderne, dressed in a wrinkled thobe and worn sandals, being told he didn't belong. "Mr. Al-Rashid," Gerard was saying, his voice urgent, "please, allow me to personally escort you to your table. We have the chef's tasting menu prepared, an exceptional wine pairing and—" "Gerard," Khalid interrupted gently, "I appreciate that. But first, I'd like to speak with Trevor here for just a moment." Trevor looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. His face had gone from pale to red, and his hands were shaking slightly at his sides. Trevor started, but no words came. Khalid stepped closer to him, and his voice was quiet enough that only Trevor, Gerard, and Charlotte could hear clearly. But in the silence of the restaurant, his words carried. "You judged me," Khalid said, "based solely on my appearance. You decided I was poor, that I didn't belong, that I couldn't afford to eat here. You were rude, dismissive, and cruel, and you did all of this without knowing a single thing about who I am." "Mr. Al-Rashid," Trevor said, and his voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know." "That's exactly my point," Khalid interrupted. "You didn't know, but you acted as if you did. You made assumptions. You treated me not as a person, but as a problem to be removed." Tears were actually forming in Trevor's eyes now. "Please, sir, I made a terrible mistake. I'll do anything." "Do you know why I dress this way?" Khalid asked, gesturing to his thobe and sandals. "Even when I could afford to wear something different. Even when I know it will cause exactly this kind of reaction." Trevor shook his head, unable to speak. "Because clothing is just fabric. It doesn't define worth. It doesn't define character. And the moment we start believing it does, we stop seeing each other as human beings." Khalid paused, and his voice softened. "I fly commercial even though I own private jets. I wear traditional dress even in cities where it makes me stand out. I stay in regular hotels sometimes even though I own luxury properties. Do you know why?" "Why?" Trevor whispered. "To remember," Khalid said simply. "To remember what it feels like to be judged, to be dismissed, to be treated as less than. Because the moment I forget that, the moment I start thinking, I'm better than anyone else because of money or status or anything else, that's the moment I lose my humanity." The restaurant was so quiet that the soft hum of the air conditioning seemed loud. "I'm not telling you this to shame you," Khalid continued. "I'm telling you this because you need to understand something fundamental. Every person who walks through that door deserves basic respect and dignity. Rich or poor, well-dressed or not, from here or from halfway around the world. Everyone, I understand," Trevor said, and tears were now openly running down his face. Mr. Al-Rashid, I am deeply, deeply sorry. You're right, about all of it. I was cruel, and I was wrong, and I have no excuse. Khalid studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. I believe you are sorry. The question is, will you be different? Yes, Trevor said immediately. Yes, I will. I swear it. Then that's enough, Khalid said. He turned to Gerard. I don't want him fired. Gerard, who had clearly been preparing to do exactly that, looked startled. Mr. Al-Rashid, surely after this behavior, everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow, Khalid said firmly. If you fire him, he'll just be angry and resentful. He won't actually change. But if you give him the opportunity to be better, to truly understand what he did wrong, he looked back at Trevor, then maybe something good can come from this. Trevor was openly sobbing now, his professional composure completely shattered. Thank you, he managed. Thank you so much. I won't waste this chance. I promise you. Khalid reached out and placed a hand on Trevor's shoulder, a gesture so unexpected and kind that it made several people in the restaurant tear up. We all make mistakes, Khalid said gently. What matters is what we do afterward. He turned to Charlotte, who had been watching the entire scene with wide eyes. I believe I have a table waiting? Yes, sir, Charlotte said quickly, her voice thick with emotion. Right this way, Mr. Al-Rashid. And I'm sorry too. I should have stopped this. You're learning too, Khalid said with a small smile. We all are. As Charlotte led him into the restaurant, the diners watched in absolute silence. Some looked ashamed, some looked moved. Some were still filming on their phones, knowing they had just witnessed something that would be shared across social media within minutes. Khalid was seated at a prime table by the window, where the Manhattan skyline glittered like scattered diamonds against the darkening sky. The October evening had deepened into night, and the city lights seemed to pulse with life and energy. Gerard himself took Khalid's order, bringing out the chef to personally discuss the menu. But before any food arrived, something extraordinary began to happen. The businessman with silver hair approached Khalid's table. Mr. Al-Rashid, he said, I'm Robert Chen. I just wanted to say, what you did just now, how you handled that situation, that was remarkable. I'm ashamed to say I was watching, and I said nothing. I should have spoken up. You're speaking up now, Khalid said warmly. That's what matters. Others came too. An older woman who taught high school English, a young couple celebrating their anniversary, a journalist who wanted to write about the incident, each one coming to express admiration, to apologize for their own silence, to thank him for the lesson they'd just witnessed. Khalid greeted each person with the same warmth and humility. No airs, no self-importance, just a man having conversations with other people. The food, when it came, was extraordinary. Duck confit with cherry reduction, truffle-infused risotto, perfectly seared scallops, a wine pairing that was nothing short of art. But Khalid ate it the way he did everything else, with appreciation, but without ceremony. Good food was good food. It didn't require performance. Halfway through the meal, Trevor approached the table. He'd clearly been crying in the back, and his eyes were red-rimmed, but his posture was different now, humbler, more genuine. Mr. Al-Rashid, he said quietly, may I speak with you for just a moment? Of course, Khalid said, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. Please, sit. Trevor sat, looking uncomfortable but determined. I've been thinking about what you said, about judging people, about treating everyone with respect. He paused, gathering his courage. I need to tell you something, about why I acted that way. Khalid waited, giving him space. I grew up poor, Trevor said. Really poor. My parents worked 3 jobs between them just to keep our apartment. I wore second-hand clothes my whole childhood, and people looked at me the way I looked at you tonight. His voice cracked. They judged me. They treated me like I was less than, like I didn't matter. And when you got this job, Khalid said softly, understanding, when you finally made it into this world of wealth and luxury, I became exactly what I hated, Trevor finished, his voice barely a whisper. I started judging others the same way. I thought if I could spot who didn't belong, if I could keep them out, then that proved I belonged in, that I'd made it. He looked up, meeting Khalid's eyes. But I just became the people who hurt me. I became the problem. That's a profound realization, Khalid said, and admitting it takes courage. My parents would be ashamed of me, Trevor said, wiping his eyes. They taught me better than this. They taught me that kindness costs nothing, that dignity isn't about money, and I forgot all of it. Khalid was quiet for a moment. Then he said, tell me about your parents. And for the next 20 minutes, Trevor did. He told Khalid about his mother who cleaned offices at night and made the best chicken soup in the world, about his father who drove a delivery truck and never missed one of Trevor's school plays, about how they'd both passed away within a year of each other, 5 years ago, and how he'd been trying to make them proud ever since, but feeling like he was failing. They would have liked you to treat people the way you wish you'd been treated, Khalid said when Trevor finished. The way they taught you. That's how you honor them. I know, Trevor said. And I'm going to be different, better. He stood up, extending his hand. Thank you, Mr. Al-Rashid, for the lesson, for the forgiveness, for everything. Khalid shook his hand firmly. Thank you for being willing to listen. That's rarer than you think. As Trevor walked away, Gerard appeared with a concerned expression. Mr. Al-Rashid, I hope Trevor wasn't bothering you. I can have him. He wasn't bothering me at all, Khalid said. In fact, I think you have a good man there. Someone who made a mistake but is genuinely trying to learn from it. Those are the people worth keeping. Gerard nodded slowly. You're very generous, sir. More generous than most would be in your position. Generosity is easy when you have everything, Khalid said. The hard part is remembering to be generous when you're the one who's been wronged. The rest of the dinner passed peacefully. Khalid finished his meal, enjoyed a perfect creme brulee for dessert, and sipped on a cognac that cost more per glass than many people's weekly grocery bill. When he finally asked for the check, Gerard arrived personally with a leather folio. Mr. Al-Rashid, tonight's dinner is on the house. It's the absolute least we can do after— Gerard, Khalid interrupted gently. I appreciate the gesture, but I'd like to pay, and I'd like to leave a tip. Of course, sir, whatever you'd like. Khalid signed the check, closed the folio, and handed it back to Gerard. Then he stood, preparing to leave. Have a wonderful evening, Mr. Al-Rashid, Gerard said. And again, my deepest apologies for— No more apologies, Khalid said with a warm smile. The evening turned out perfectly. He made his way to the entrance, and as he did, something remarkable happened. The entire restaurant, every diner, every server, even the busboys clearing tables, stood up. They didn't applaud, they didn't cheer, they simply stood, a gesture of respect and recognition that was far more powerful than any ovation. Khalid paused at the door, turned back, and nodded to them all. Then he walked out into the October night, disappearing into the flow of Manhattan pedestrians. Gerard stood holding the leather folio, feeling its unexpected weight. He opened it slowly, looking at the check. The meal had come to $847, a healthy sum for a multi-course dinner with wine pairings. Khalid Al-Rashid had left a tip of $50,000, and attached to the check was a handwritten note on the Château Moderne stationery for Trevor's parents. Start a scholarship fund in their names for hospitality workers from low-income backgrounds. Kindness should always be remembered. Gerard's hands shook as he read the note. Around him, servers were gathering, trying to see what had caused their manager's expression to shift from curiosity to awe. What is it? Charlotte asked. What did he do? Gerard showed them the check, the tip, the note. Several people gasped. One server started crying. Find Trevor, Gerard said quietly. Find him right now. They found Trevor in the break room, still trying to compose himself. When Gerard showed him the check and the note, Trevor literally collapsed into a chair, his whole body shaking with sobs. He did this, Trevor kept saying. After what I did to him, he did this. He saw something in you worth saving, Gerard said, his own voice thick. Don't waste it. The story spread through the restaurant like wildfire, then through the hospitality industry, then through social media. By morning, it was trending on Twitter. By afternoon, news outlets were picking it up. By evening, it had gone viral worldwide. But none of the news coverage, none of the social media posts, none of the think pieces written about judgment and redemption and the meaning of wealth, none of it captured what happened in that restaurant better than what Trevor Morrison did 3 weeks later. He stood in front of a room full of new servers being trained at Le Château Moderne, and he told them about the night Khalid Al-Rashid walked through their doors. He told them about his cruelty, his judgment, his assumption, and he told them about the lesson he learned. Every person who walks through that door is a human being first, Trevor said, his voice strong and clear. Everything else, their clothes, their appearance, their accent, where they're from, all of that is secondary. Treat everyone with dignity, treat everyone with respect, because you never know who you're really talking to, and more importantly, because it's simply the right thing to do. The scholarship fund in his parents' names was established the following month. It would go on to help 47 young people from low-income backgrounds receive training and employment in the hospitality industry over the next 5 years. Every recipient would be told the story of how the fund came to be and what it represented. And Trevor Morrison, who had once judged a billionaire for wearing sandals and a wrinkled thobe, became one of the most respected training managers in Manhattan's hospitality scene, known for his emphasis on dignity, respect, and the fundamental humanity that should guide every interaction. As for Khalid Al-Rashid, he continued flying commercial, wearing his traditional dress, and occasionally being mistaken for someone who didn't belong in fancy restaurants. And each time it happened, he treated it not as an insult, but as an opportunity to teach, to demonstrate grace, and to remind people of a truth that should have been obvious, but somehow kept getting forgotten. That clothing is just fabric, that appearances deceive, that worth is measured not in dollars or designer labels, but in how we treat each other when no one is watching and nothing is at stake, except our own humanity. The October night in Manhattan, when a waiter mocked a billionaire, became a story told and retold, shared and reshared. But the real story wasn't about a dramatic confrontation or a shocking revelation of wealth. It was about a moment when someone chose kindness over revenge, teaching over punishment, and forgiveness over condemnation. It was about recognizing that we're all human, we all make mistakes, and we all deserve the chance to learn and grow. And that, perhaps, is the most valuable lesson of all, one that no amount of money can buy, but that everyone can afford to give. The restaurant is still there, on the Upper East Side, its windows glowing warmly against the Manhattan night. And if you visit, you might notice something near the entrance, a small plaque, elegant and understated, with words engraved in simple script. Everyone who enters here deserves respect, dignity, and kindness. Judge no one by their appearance. Welcome everyone with grace. Below it, in smaller letters, in honor of Khalid Al-Rashid, who taught us what truly matters. And every server who works there knows the story. Every manager shares it with new employees. Every guest who asks about the plaque hears about the night judgment gave way to grace, and cruelty was answered with compassion. The night the restaurant fell silent and learned to truly see.